In Southeast Asia, some legends begin with nothing more than a lamp, a roof, and the feeling that something is waiting above you. These stories place danger close to the roof, the window, and the rooms families trusted most.
The oldest fears were rarely far away. They stood just outside the room, listening for grief, weakness, or carelessness. Even a gently moving charm could become a warning once the night leaned hard enough against the walls.
Paths emptied early for a reason. Darkness did not only hide strangers, it made the familiar feel newly uncertain. Across Southeast Asia, these warnings took different names, but they guarded the same fragile borders of life. This was never random horror. Folklore placed monsters exactly where ordinary people felt least protected.
The village, the roofline, the path, the window, the cradle. Those were the true stages of fear.
Parents closed doors, travelers hurried home, and neighbors watched one another more carefully after dusk.
Because once a culture repeats the same warning long enough, it is telling you what it could not afford to ignore.
One of the most unforgettable begins not with claws, but with impossible calm. She stands where moonlight touches the leaves, still enough to seem carved from the night itself.
The Pontianak is remembered first as beauty, pale, graceful, silent, and almost gentle.
That is why the danger lingers. She does not arrive looking monstrous. She arrives looking trusted. Some tales say men noticed her fragrance before they understood they were already too close. Others say the road itself grew quieter, as if the grove knew what the traveler did not.
Then the details begin to shift. The eyes stay open too long. The hands linger wrong. The stillness hardens. That origin matters. She is not random malice. She is grief that never found a resting place.
In a world where childbirth could become tragedy overnight, sorrow needed a form people would never forget.
So the story gave loss a face and set it waiting, where village life meets darkness. The lesson changed with the teller. Do not wander. Do not prey on the vulnerable. Do not assume beauty means safety. But the emotional core remained unfinished death, unfinished rage, unfinished life.
That is why the Pontianak feels less like a creature and more like an accusation. And when a legend begins as mourning, every sudden movement feels personal.
At first, it looks like a lantern floating too high and moving too deliberately. Then the glow resolves into a face, and the village remembers exactly why it fears the night sky. The Krasue drifts without footsteps, without doors, without permission, entering fear where walls should have mattered. Its power is not only appearance, it is the calm violation of household boundaries.
Stories place it near kitchens, livestock, windows, and sleeping families, domestic spaces transformed into hunting ground.
No fortress matters much against something that moves like hunger itself.
By dawn, the terror changes shape. If it was human by day, who did the village welcome yesterday?
That suspicion is what gives the Krasue lasting force. The danger may already eat beside you in daylight.
In many tellings, the creature is cursed, hidden, or split between ordinary life and secret appetite.
Folklore understands that concealed corruption frightens more deeply than open violence.
Once the human form itself feels uncertain, Safety inside the home begins to collapse.
That is why even a soft hovering light can feel unbearable in these stories.
And in the Philippines, that anxiety grows even broader, because the next monster was never only one thing.
The Aswang survived because it refused to stay inside a single shape.
In one region, it feeds like a vampire. In another, it shifts, creeps, devours, or waits above a sleeping house.
That variety matters. The Aswang is not one monster. It is a system for naming dread.
Its most frightening talent is not speed or strength. It is social camouflage.
By day, it can smile, trade, gossip, and pass through the village like anyone else. By night, the same face may lean over a roofline and listen for the weakest room.
That possibility poisons trust itself.
A predator outside the village is dangerous. A predator inside the village changes the meaning of community. In tightly connected places, reputation was protection, and familiarity was survival.
So a monster wearing a neighbor's shape threatens more than bodies. It threatens the rules that hold a town together. This is why so many Aswang stories gather around pregnant women, infants, and darkened homes.
The most fragile points of family life were imagined as the most vulnerable to predation.
Before constant light, emergency care, or certainty through the night, helplessness needed a face.
The Aswang gave that helplessness many faces.
The legend also absorbs hunger, envy, secrecy, illness, and the fear that evil can remain socially competent.
That makes it endlessly adaptable, which is exactly why it endured.
Every village version adds a new detail, but the structure remains the same. Trust first, terror second.
And once the community begins to doubt its own eyes, daylight stops feeling fully innocent.
The cleverness of the Aswang is not merely killing. It is teaching people to reread every familiar face.
That lesson survives because betrayal always feels more intimate than attack.
So the monster lingers not only in the trees or on the roof, but in memory, rumor, and sideways glances. By the time dawn arrives, everyone looks human again. That may be the cruelest detail of all.
Nearby traditions imagined a different impossible body, but returned to the same warning. Wholeness can fail when fear grows ritualized.
Once the community begins rereading every familiar face, daylight itself stops feeling simple.
Nearby traditions imagined a different impossible body, but returned to the same warning. Wholeness can fail when fear grows ritualized.
The Penanggalan is unforgettable because the image refuses to behave like the world we know. A woman's head rises into the night, carrying the suggestion that the body has been violently separated from safety. Like the character in Image 2, it fuses familiar features with impossible motion, which makes recognition itself feel contaminated.
It moves over rooftops and toward vulnerable rooms, turning private shelter into exposed terrain. The household remains central because folklore knows exactly where fear hurts most.
The grotesque image is not there for spectacle alone. It burns the lesson into memory. Once you have imagined the human body unmade this way, ordinary night sounds become harder to dismiss.
That response matters. Folklore was not only storytelling, it was behavior shaped by story. Legends taught people how to notice, what to avoid, and which thresholds required guarding.
Even when the monster differs, the pattern returns. Protect the home, protect the newborn, protect the vulnerable. And when fear must be remembered for generations, impossible images become useful tools. Yet not every monster screams through the air. Some arrive low to the ground, small enough to hide beside your valuables.
The Toyol changes the scale of horror, but not the seriousness of its warning.
It is small, childlike, and easy to underestimate, which is exactly what makes it effective. Instead of attacking from the wilderness, it slips into the secret corners people make for greed.
In many tellings, it is used for theft, advantage, and wealth acquired through hidden corruption.
That makes its terror intimate. The real danger is not the creature alone, but the bargain behind it.
Folklore often understands that the most dangerous evil is the one people welcome because it promises profit.
So the Toyol belongs in storerooms, jewelry boxes, ledgers, and rooms where money changes character. Its little movements matter because they reveal a larger moral stain.
When coins disappear, trust follows them.
When wealth arrives too easily, the house itself begins to feel inhabited by a secret cost. That is why the Toyol feels less like a beast and more like guilt made mobile.
And once greed joins the same night world as the other monsters, the pattern finally becomes impossible to miss.
Step back now, and the legends begin speaking to one another.
The character in image 1 waits near grief and beauty. The character in image 2 near contamination.
Different names, different shapes, but the same fragile zones keep reappearing.
These are the coordinates of fear in ordinary life.
That is why folklore lasts longer than explanation. Images reach memory faster than analysis.
A floating head can transmit dread more efficiently than a lecture about vulnerability.
A shape-shifting neighbor can outlive a warning about trust.
A beautiful ghost under banala leaves can preserve grief more stubbornly than history ever could. And a tiny thief in the dark can say more about corruption than a courtroom. Monsters survive when they are built exactly where people feel weakest.
So these stories are not only fantasies, they are emotional maps of what communities could not afford to lose.
Children, mothers, health, trust, safety, and the thin line between home and danger.
Once you see that pattern, the night in these stories stops feeling random and starts feeling deliberate. Interpretation. The darkest creatures of Southeast Asian folklore are warnings disguised as unforgettable bodies.
They endure because the fears underneath them did not vanish when the stories were told.
Medical risk changed, villages changed, houses changed, but grief, secrecy, greed, and vulnerability remained.
That is why the faces change across borders, while the lesson stays eerily familiar.
Whenever a culture keeps inventing the same monster, listen closely to what it is protecting.
The repetition usually means the danger was real enough to outlive memory. So if a lamp burns late, a roof creaks softly, or the road home suddenly feels...
The names may change, but the warning is still waiting at the edge of the light. Step deeper into the dark.